Всем привитание. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the presentation of the new book, Belarus: Prospect of Middle Power, by Dr. Piotra Murzionak. Before talking about the book, I would like to introduce the author. Dr. Murzionak was born into a family of rural teachers who brought him up in an authentic Belarusian environment. Like all students at rural schools, he needed to switch from Belarusian to Russian language to complete the high school, which was quite challenging for many students. After graduating from the Minsk Medical University with a medical doctor diploma, Peter started his career in medical science, where he received PhD in hematology and Doctor of Science in physiology. He's the author of multiple publications in immunology and physiology, including articles in peer-reviewed journals. The feeling of being Belarusian has always been very important for Peter, and it was natural for him participating in the civic events, meetings in support of Belarusian independence, and expressing his position and vision of Belarus nation building in discussions that unfolded after the collapse of the USSR on the pages of Republican newspapers. At the time of revival at Radzhenya in the 90s, he was a member of the Terminology Commission in the National Skarina Center that produced Russian Belarusian dictionaries and different scientific areas, including short Russian Belarusian vocabulary and philosophy, physiology, короткий российский белорусский физиологичный словник. Before moving to Canada, in 1998, he worked as the chief of Department of Applied Physiology at the National Academy of Science and as a professor and chair of the Department of Immunology at the International Sakharov Ecology University in Minsk. Since all of his medical and scientific diplomas were recognized in Canada, Dr. Murzionak was able to continue his professional work in this country. Currently, he is working with Health Canada as an expert in vaccine safety. In the last 2 years in the COVID vaccine team. In Canada, his interest in nation building is focused on problems related to modern Belarus. Since 1993, he published 3 books and more than 100 articles on this topic, including 2 scholarly articles in the journal Comparative Civilizations Review. 2 of his books in Belarusian are accepted in the National Library of the Republic of Belarus and available in bookstores in Belarus. Dr. Murzionak is also the founder and editor of online magazine Kultura Nacja, Culture and Nation, which has published 29 issues with over 260 articles by some 51 authors. Dr. Murzionak is the president of the Belarusian Institute of Arts and Sciences in Canada, the member of board of directors of Belarusian-Canadian Alliance, leading organization of Belarusian diaspora in Canada. He has 2 sons and 3 grandsons. Please welcome Dr. Piotr Murzionak.
Good evening, dear friends and colleagues. I am pleased to present today my new book entitled Belarus: Prospects of Middle Power, produced by Lexington Press in the USA in March 2022. I am very glad to see many people in this audience today, as Belarusians, as my friends and colleagues from other diaspora communities and institutions. Among them, Ivonka Survila, President of Rada BNR, Dr. Alexander Jablonski, president of Oskar Halecki Institute. It's a Polish institution. And friends from USA, thank you all of you for joining. In the very beginning, I would like to say special thanks to people who were directly involved in certain extent in the creation of my book. To Professor David Marples from Alberta University and Professor Jerzy Grybowski from Warsaw University for their valuable comments and support. To my first editor, Mary Metcalf, who improved not only English style, but provided valuable feedback and did excellent work with many references. To Alexander Karalkevich for his detailed and meticulous preparation of maps. To Anatoly Lazar for his original and artistic book cover. To my numerous friends in public organization in Canada, Belarusian Institute of Arts and Sciences and the Belarusian-Canadian Alliance, and in Belarus, Zgurtowanie Белорусов Світу Батьківщина, whose friendship and support generated the favorable atmosphere for my creative work on the book. Certainly, I wish to express my heartfelt feelings to the members of my family here in North America and in Belarus, including my mom Donata, age 92, and the youngest, grandson Timothy, just 2.5 years old. Today, my son and my brother with their families are present here. Most of all, I would like to say thank you to my wife, Natalia Barkar, whose love, understanding, and unconditional support have accompanied not only the period of this book preparation, but my whole life. My book is dedicated to Belarusian fighters, for Belarusians fighting for freedom and democracy. Its main topic is Belarusian nation, with many aspects of its more than 100 years history. Altogether, I was working on this book for 9 years. The scope of my presentation today is to tell you about the idea and the reason for writing this book, to describe main parts of the book and to provide key evidence supporting main statements, to update data associated with ongoing war in Ukraine. Ultimately, I could not cover all topics presented in the book because it's quite a huge volume of almost 350 pages. So I concentrated on these 3 main tasks. The idea of writing Belarus with prospect of a middle power has been ripening for several years. It was dictated by my desire to answer how it was happened that Belarus, a country located in the center of Europe and historically close to European culture and values, was experiencing significant difficulties on the road to building a democratic national state, at a time when the fate of small and medium-sized nations continues to depend on behavior of their big neighbors. This idea was also inspired by my internal discomfort of historical narratives created for centuries by Russian scholars and politicians. Specifically, these narratives include transfer of Kievan Rus heritage to Moscow, Slavic character of Russia, and finally, the idea about trinity of 3 nations, Great Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusians. The idea about trinity does not preclude existence of independent Belarusian and Ukrainian people. Until now, many Western readers consider Belarus as a part of Russia. Those narratives are not really true. However, they are broadly distributed over the world. For example, it is worth recalling the textbook of Nicholas Rezanovsky for Canadian students, where the name of Kievan Russia, or Russia, not Kievan Rus, is used for events taking place in 9th, 10th centuries, despite the fact that the word Russia was introduced by Peter Great only in 1721. The idea to write this book was also inspired by my belief that the role of nations will be increasing at least in the nearest 100 years. You may ask me, what were other reasons for writing on this topic? My first article regarding Belarusian national destiny was published in 1993 in Belarus. This vocation continued in Canada with the founding of the web magazine Culture Nation, Kultura Nacije, in 2012, where I share my research and analysis of relevant issues with the public. My personal interest in various aspects related to the development of Belarusian nation has resulted in a dozen articles on this topic and in 2 books, Ways to Belarusian Nation and What Every Belarusian Should Be Proud of, recently published in Belarusian. As a result, 5 years ago, I came to understanding that it was time to publish a book about Belarus in English, given that the most modern scientific and popular literature in English covers only short and quite specific periods of Belarusian history. Additional motivation and support to the writing of this book was my academic background and experience and research and analysis. I talk about the motives for writing the book in order to clarify that it took me good courage and luck to undertake unprecedented studies related to many complex topics. What is the book about? It consists of 4 parts, which include a critical look at Belarusian history from the 9th century to the present day from a point of view that differs from that one used by most Russian scholars and which is widespread throughout the world. Original concept and evidence of the existence of Western-Ruthenian, Belarusian-Ukrainian civilization, a sub-civilization of Western civilization, which is different from the Eurasian or Russian civilization. Book provides also the latest information on Belarusian society regarding mentality, identity, language, religion, current elites, and Belarusian revolution in 2020, which I call the Revolution of Hope 2020. And finally, the book provides an analysis of the current activities of Belarusian national and ruling elites and the differences between their ideologies in nation building, as well as analysis of future prospects of Belarus based on the current trends in human society development. Part 1, consisting of 2 chapters, is very important to look deeply into the way of Belarusians from ethnos to a nation in the period from 9th to 19th century, which resulted in Belarusian statehood in the 20th century. This slide showed defined specific historical period analyzed in 2 first chapters, including pre-chronicle period, period of Polotsk, Grand Duchy of Lithuania, period of Rzeczpospolita, period without statehood, and finally, period of Belarusian Public Republic and period of Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic. I analyze the historical development of Belarus and Russia in parallel, century by century, in period from the 10th to 19th century, and demonstrated that dynamics of their development are significantly different, and all facts reject the common misperception that Belarus, like Ukraine, is part of Russia. This is evidenced by the most important historical events that took place in the lands of Belarus in Russia, such as the principalities of Polotsk and Turov were formed almost 2 centuries before the principalities of northeastern region, Novgorod Republic, Vladimir Suzdal. Eastern Slavs on the territory of Belarus were mixed with Baltic tribes in 7th, 13th centuries, while in the northeastern region, where future Muscovy was born, they were mixed first with Finno-Ugric tribes that I call first wave of assimilation, and later with Turkic peoples in 13th to 19th centuries that I call second wave of Great Russians assimilation. Also, Belarusian lands were never under the Golden Order, while the northeastern region for 240 years were under Golden Order occupation. From the foundation of the Principality of Polotsk until the end of 18th century, the territory of modern Belarus has never been dependent on Moscow or Russia. During the period of Grand Duchy Lithuania, Moscow provoked numerous wars against Lithuania under the auspices of Orthodox population protection, which were not successful. From the end of 15th century, as the Golden Order declined and fragmented, and up to the middle of the 17th century, there were 9 major wars between the Lithuania and Muscovy, and after Lublin Union between Rzeczpospolita and Muscovy. Thus, it is difficult to see at least some basic features of the trinity of the Eastern Slavic peoples. Some 1.5 million Belarusians were killed, and most of the existing more than 700 cities and towns in Lithuania were destroyed during the war with Muscovy in 1654 to 1667. And Lithuania were more than 90, and in Lithuania there were, more than 90% population in Lithuania were Ruthenian, and they defended civilizational values that were vastly different from Muscovy and were not only religious value. It is evident that historically and ethnically, Belarusian and Ukrainian people did not belong to Russia. Sorry, maybe it's, yeah, too early. Moreover, all these principles findings led me to formulate the concept of the existence Eastern Slavic or Belarusian Ukrainian civilization, which I finally called Ruthenian civilization, and to define its place among other existing civilizations. I'd like to underline now main evidence which led to make a conclusion that Belarusians and Ukrainians together formed Ruthenian civilization that differs substantially from the Eurasian one. Among them, different dynamics of historical development of Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine, different character of migration and assimilation of Eastern Slavs with variety of tribes, ethnic differences, impact of Mongol invasion on demarcation of Great Russian and Belarusians with Ukrainians, exceptional role of Grand Duchy Lithuania in uniting Ruthenians, Belarusian and Ukrainians that saved their civilization. The civil war between Svitrigaila and Žygimantas in the beginning of the 15th century, which was determined not only by religious motives, but rather by political motivation. By European nature of Belarus and Ukraine, the presence of European civilization and processes, the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, the Union of Brest, the Enlightenment, the presence of European institutions, Parliament, Sejm, Magdeburg rights, town halls, all these features were not present in Moscow or Russia. Critical analysis of classical and modern Eurasianist view also helped to formulate this concept. Other evidence: prolonged fighting Belarusians and Ukrainian against Muscovites, as it was shown on previous slide, for the only period from 1492 to 1667, that is for the period of 170 years, 80 years were years of war, where Belarusians fought directly with Muscovites. Indeed, it can be called a clash of civilizations. And finally, very serious evidence is the current war launched by Russia against Ukraine. Thus, we believe Belarus and Ukraine together formed, starting 13th, 14th centuries, a distinctive East European Slavic civilization. The formation of this civilization and Eurasian civilization was the result of interaction and impact Slav movements from west to east and Eurasian peoples from east to west, processes that continue to nowadays. Let's see, where is the position of Ruthenian civilization among other civilizations? According to Samuel Huntington, there are 8 civilizations, as you see on this screen. The newest ones, such as universal, complementary, or hybrid culture civilization, were suggested by Targovsky. We are interested in 2 of the present here, Western and Orthodox or Eurasian, Russian civilization, as they are relevant to Belarus and Ukraine. According to the opinion of authors presented here, they include the 2 Orthodox or Eurasian, Russian or Eastern civilization 5 countries: Belarus, Bulgaria, Moldova, Russia, and Ukraine. It appears that inclusion of Belarusians and Ukrainians into Orthodox Eurasian civilization in most cases is carried out based on religious preferences. We don't share this idea. We consider a civilization as an integral structure that has distinct ethnic, linguistic, religious, territorial, and mentality multiplied by the historical experience, heritage, and development of the society and people over a long period of time. That's why we believe that Belarusian-Ukrainian or Ruthenian civilization in many ways corresponds to definition of civilization, or rather sub-civilization, if we bear in mind that some researchers have extended Western civilization to a civilization of presumptively lower order. Targovsky distinguished Western West, Western Latin, Western Jewish, and Western Central sub-civilizations, while Kuzik and Yakovets define North American, Latin American, and Oceanic, West European, and East European sub-civilization of Western civilization. Based on the evidence presented in this book, it might be concluded that the Belarusian Ukrainian civilizations differs from Eurasian civilization and should be classified as Western-Ruthenian sub-civilization of Western civilization. Each of the chapter in part 3 is a separate distinct study. Certainly, I cannot to provide all detailed results today, instead just providing a brief general conclusion, leaving remaining for readers' analysis and comments. In chapter 5, comparison of conditions in 20th and 90s of last century demonstrated low unity in national elites. In chapter 6, estimation of ethnic Belarusian population in the world was done. According to this calculation, in 2016, 9.7 million of Belarusians lived in the world, and 1/6 of them lived abroad. In chapter 7, notice the high homogeneity of Belarusians of 84.9% in recent survey. And this high homogeneity is a major fundament for national building. 4 possible future models for native language are discussed in this chapter as well. In chapter 8, it was shown that Belarusians are quite tolerant to traditional religions. However, they are not inclusive regarding racial and sexual minorities, non-typical religious belief, and support death penalty. In chapter 9 was shown that Orthodox preference in Belarus is exaggerated. No more than 50% of total population and communities are involved with this religion denomination. Sorry. Religions are not, and one more conclusion here was done, that religions are not real power in nation building process. In part 4, we analyze future prospects of Belarus, including the lessons from Revolution of Hope 2020. After analysis of theoretical models of the Belarusian national state construction in chapter 10, we believe that it is still possible to do, despite the opinion of some scholars, Groch, Snyder, and others, who consider that Belarusian nation is quite immature yet, and that the Belarusians missed their chance to build mature and powerful nation as did their neighbors. Positive factors for nation building are theoretical possibility of nation building and activities of the national elite, high homogeneity of Belarusian population, and negative factors are as follows: dictatorial regime, low level of political and national culture of Belarusians, a lack of government support, the threat of Russian aggression, the undue influence of Moscow Orthodoxy, the intolerance of Belarusian to people of other races, beliefs, and behavior. In chapter 11 to 14, we discuss 4 different scenarios for future of Belarus. This scenario includes to remain in the same situation as today, and to be absorbed by Russia, to go voluntarily into the Russian world as a colony or one of the subjects of the Russian Federation, to become a member of the European Union, or to become a real neutral country with gradual accession to a common security system. Each of those scenarios has their own pro and contra arguments. We also assess probability of those scenario realization. For example, if you look for possibility to be in the European Union, so the factors which support this are historically belonging to Europe, quite high index of human development, support of historical partners, Poland, Lithuania, positive example of Ukraine, participation in micro-infrastructure programs of Eastern European Partnership. For example, factors against accession of neutral state are like Russian pressure, general status of neutral country does not define and unpopular in the world yet, no new values and respect from the great powers, membership in military blocs. So let me stop here and make some comments associated with today's situation in Ukraine. I wrote my concluding lines to the book Belarus Prospect of Middle Power earlier in 2022 in January, and a month later, Russia launched a wider military attack war against Ukraine. First of all, this escalation of war started in 2014 just supports our thoughts that this war is inter-civilizational war, the war between Eurasian and Ruthenian civilizations. We are witnesses of ongoing World War III, where Ukraine, Belarusian close neighbor and partner, is on the front line of defense of democracy and freedom of the country and for the whole world. Ruthenian civilization is supported now by 51 countries of Western civilization, and many people now making analog with World War II, when anti-Hitler coalition consisted of 54 countries. Prior to the escalation of this present war, the leader of today's Russian aggression, Putin, conceptually decried the artificiality of Lenin's creation of Ukraine nation in the 20th century, repeating the Russian mantra about Trinity of Three Nations, and in fact denied the possibility that Ukrainian nation has any right to self-determination. Certainly, in my opinion, nothing seriously happened for this period of 4 months. It is the same situation when two civilizations are against each other. Certainly, there is a need to add further commentary explanation regarding the role of Belarus in this war, which, according to our understanding, is a Ukrainian partner in the Western-Ruthenian civilization. This is a very right and provocative question. Due to Lukashenko's continuous political course related to Russia, Belarus is considered now, according to the UN definition, as an aggressor. However, prior to the war and also during the war, Belarusian policy to the outside world was and continues to be dual in the nature. Formerly being aggressor, Belarusian territory and military infrastructure was forced to be at the mercy of Russian military machine and will. Belarus, however, is not directly involved in military battles. Having noticed that Russian blitzkrieg did not succeed, Lukashenko, within a month's time after the start of the war, began expressively backing away. I believe that anti-war stance taken by Belarusians has played out its role through ordinary Belarusian picketing, engaging in sabotage on Belarus rail lines, also the participation on many Belarusian men joining Ukraine's army and fighting with the Ukrainians against Russian aggression. We feel that no matter how circumstances have affected Belarusians, they continue to remain a nation that is part of the Western-Ruthenian civilization, the future of which remains in the hands of not only Belarusians themselves, but also to a greater degree in the hands of Ukrainians today. Today, I wanted to underline this. Our hopes for the further development of our Western-Ruthenian civilization will be determined over a protracted period of time, as we often observe in histories of international unions. After a few comments on Belarus neutrality or armed neutrality, the proponent of which I am, despite the fact that this idea is attractive as a utopian at the same time. I believe the war has steered the elite of many countries to think about and discuss the possibility of restructuring international relationship. In many aspects, it will depend on the results of this inter-civilizational war. It is true that following global military conflicts, humanity accepted some kind of appropriate steps to establish further peaceful existence of the world, countries and nations. Westphal in 1648, Vienna in 1815, the League of Nations between 1918 and 1920, the United Nations in 1945, and let me finish here and to say that the future of Belarusian nation will depend on not only Belarusian nation, Ukrainian nation, and many other people who are fighting for freedom will depend now on the final results of war with Ukraine and the establishment of new order. I believe that the winner in this war will dictate the conditions of future of many people and in particular Belarusian people also. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to hear your comments and answer your questions. Линочка моя. No questions?
I got a question about in 1991, practically all of the 15 republics declared their independence, and republics or countries like Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia got on the right track pretty quick, and they, with some difficulties obviously, but within 30 years since then, just they got farther ahead of Belarus or even Ukraine. What would be, in your opinion, the reasons for
that? I would say that the main reason for that is the stability and power of the nations. As I mentioned before in my presentation, some scholars consider Belarusian nation as a weak nation and immature nation. Others argue and don't agree with such statements. However, Belarusian nation still is in the development. As to the countries which belongs to Baltic area or so-called Baltic countries, so their development was a little bit different. They have more united elite, and I would say that before World War II, these countries were independent countries. They were not under Soviet rule, as Belarus was. If we compare a little bit further, so Western Belarus was not also under Soviet rule. And what I wanted to say is that this period between World War I and World War II was quite a period where one generation were free of the Soviet influence and Soviet pressure, etc., etc. So this might be like one of the reasons. The other reason is that under such circumstances, even pro-Soviet leaders in these countries were also nationally oriented. And let's say when the perestroika started, some of leaders, let's say Brazauskas in Lithuania, leader of communists in Lithuania, he just started to not to promote like anti-Soviet propaganda, but at least he defended the national interest of Lithuania, started to defend it. And that's why the Lithuania, like Georgia, left the Soviet Union before coup in the USSR in 1991. So this is a complex, I think, questions why it so happened. Maybe I answered your question.
Piotr, can you hear me? Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Who is that?
Sergey from Cleveland, Sergey Ramanyuk.
Nice to hear you, Sergey.
Yeah, Piotr, listen, at first I was writing book like this. We all, thousand and thousand Belarusian who are living in country and outside the country, waiting for somebody who is going to make conceptual philosophical books about general opinion in the modern Belarusian history. And you did great. I think I'm waiting to buy your book and read this book because, again, somebody who doesn't have any pragmatic reason, somebody who have experience in Belarus for half part of their life and experience in the Western lifestyle, second part of their life, somebody who doesn't have any like political motivation, create philosophical point of view about our past and our future. It's absolutely great. It's amazing. It's absolutely unique job. But my question is a little bit provocative. What do you think about the future, how we can survive like nation? We did during the 100 years one way, do not fight, adaptate. For Polish invasion, Russian invasion, Bolshevik invasion, Belarusian citizen, Belarusian normal man accept and say, okay, I am going to accept everything. It was no resistance. It's not like Ukrainian mentality, start to fight. And this is way how Belarus protect for the 1,000 years our national character, our national mentality. And right now, you were thinking we have scenario to change something in the general for our, like, because most part of the citizens in Belarus right now saying, okay, we accept Russian, we accept invasion, it's better if it's no war. Do you know what I try to ask you? This is really conceptual question. How we are going to survive during the next probably 100 years?
Thank you for your comments, Sergey. You are quite right, and many of your statements are true. And it's about national character, about some sort of tolerance, which I couldn't accept in some aspects, because Belarusian may be tolerant, but to something, but not to be patient for everything. It's a national character, and it's difficult to leave this from their souls. However, we see that nevertheless Belarusian nation exists until now, and the recent events in 2020 showed that in Minsk, it was like 300,000 people were demonstrated their will to have some changes. Yeah, I understand that the Revolution of Hope 2020 was suppressed and now is underground. And and we know that many people are in political. There are a lot of political prisons, bright people who could lead this revolution to the victory. However, the conditions are inside of Belarus is much worse than it was 2 years before. So what to do in this situation? You know, sometimes history will make us some help, as I would say. Certainly, it's we cannot only wait from help from a side. I understand that, but I could remind, for example, that all serious changes in Belarus, with Belarusian nation, happened only when the serious external factors were influencing this situation. Let's say First World War. So during this huge, when the Russia was crushed, and Belarusian People Republic was born and whilst existing only for 1 year. Let's say perestroika or crash of the USSR as well. It was so huge increase of the Belarusian mood in the country. It was much done for revival of Belarusian nation in 90s. The same was observed in 30s of the last century when the Communist Party lose the control over the situation in 2030s, while after the Stalin decided to go to communism and to repression, and all national conscious people were destroyed not only in Belarus but all over the USSR. So, what is the hope? Well, nobody was expecting that USSR will destroy it. Now the situation might be different. As I already mentioned, the fate not only Belarusian nation but Ukrainian nation, which is fighting for her freedom, but Belarusian also will be involved in this process. I believe that we expect, we not expect, but we may see in the nearest future the establishment of new order in the world. And in this situation, all powers, all forces inside the country, outside the country, and external factors of international factors may play the leading role in the going in the right direction. I mean, to build real nation. So let me finish maybe here, but because
let me provocate you a little bit more. Yes. Like what you told about right direction, but who is going to make this right direction? You are a doctor and physiologist. You know, if you have stressful or distressful situation, you have some like reaction for the stress, or you fight against this dangerous enemy, or you are run away, or you are make some mimicry and you try to adaptate. 100 year Belarusian staying between Western and Eastern Europe, between Russian and they already find this resolution, mimicry, adaptate, try to protect and say, okay, моя хата с краю, Petro. Yeah. This is way, but right now you say, oh, our scenario, it's like Ukraine. We have to fight. We're probably losing 1,000 soldiers or 1,000 fighters. We're losing people who is going to be arrested. How do you feel? What is really right now change in our history and our country history to say we have hope because we have support from Western, we have support from America, or we have new generation, or we have new mentality, or internet, or social network? What is change in Belarusian mentality? Change this country style mentality to the like IT person mentality.
So this is a question I would divide, how to say, what to do now. So yeah. You are right that the situation is bad. I am also pessimistic. First of all, because in some sense I am pessimistic, but I leave hope for the future. When I was writing this book, the pessimistic tried to tell me on my ear that, okay, write this pessimistic notes, but I couldn't do it because my hand could not write these wrong things. I have to leave hope for people. But what to do? Look at our elites. They are not united yet. Who are leaders? There are not leaders. One leader I would suggest one leader. Это Tikhanovskaya. She was a real leader 2 years ago. Why the people, very clever people like Pozniak, like other people, leaders of the Свободной Belarus, for Sannikov, etc., why they could not join together around this person who won a lot of voices and had a huge support in among the population? There is nothing. So one thing, internet is okay. The bad thing, next bad thing, because many people migrated after Revolution Hope 2020. According to the Batkushina, about 400,000 people left Belarus. We left with you. I and you left long before this, right? So, but nevertheless, in 2020, we saw on the streets hundreds of thousands of people. So Belarusians still have something in their soul, and they have this hope. But I don't think that external how to say, it's import of the revolution to Belarus from outside is not possible. Even with fighters, military fighters, let's say it will be polk Kalinovskого, or 2 polk of Kalinovskого, 2 polks, or even 10 polks Kalinovskого. It doesn't solve the problem, I am pretty sure, because currently Lukashenko is able to fight these polks very simple. So the main force is our people who lived in Belarus. If they will understand, if they will be well educated, well prepared politically, economically, etc., so we should wait, I guess. I don't see any other way, and to help from diaspora as we can, and also it's my thoughts. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I would stop here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, good evening. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I have just a simple question. I made it the chat. What comes after Lukashenko? For example, say he dies, or he resigns, or he's ousted tomorrow. What do you think, Mr. Murzionak? What do you think will happen in the short term? Because the way I see things, it usually gets worse before it can get better. But since you are an optimistic, as you said, you have an optimistic approach. What do you think could happen in the short term? And how could Belarusians find a way out of the turmoil in such a situation? Thank you, and congratulations for your book.
Thank you. I think in short term, the situation would be not much more better for nation building, because around the Lukashenko there are many people who support him. I mean in the elite who are in the power now, and in the conditions when Russia will support Belarus as a member of the union of 2 countries, it's difficult to imagine that in short term it might be done something. And we have to remember also that even during the Revolution of Hope 2020, there were no national slogans, in fact. Yes, there were flags, national flags. There were national flags, but leaders didn't suggest any national slogans. The requirements were only to release political prisoners, to organize new elections, to remove Lukashenko. So it was typical democratic revolution, but not national liberation. So the people and leaders, at least, leaders are not ready to national construction yet. They even didn't mention something about this. So this is also dangerous. So yes, in short term, as I mentioned before, in scenario 1 and scenario 2, we have very serious threat to be involved in a Russian world. But again, it will depend on the results of this aggressive, unhuman war which Russia launched against Ukraine. Thank you.
So, Mr. Yablonsky, your question?
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. And could you open my video? I can't open it. Yeah, I just like.
I can talk. I can only ask you to do that. Would be on your side. Okay.
All right. I started. Okay. Thank you very much. And I just like to congratulate Dr. Murzionak, my good friend, for this fantastic book. And I will be very happy to read it and buy it. And I just like to ask two questions. I am by birth Polish, and I am president of the Oskar Halecki Institute in Canada. The Oskar Halecki Institute is trying to also address issues associated with the whole region, and we promote understanding and also solidarity of all nations living in this region, which are endangered right now by the Russian war. I think Russian war presents a real danger to the future of the whole region. And I have a question to you. How do you see the resolution of this war and the place of the independent Belarus in the new order? I like very much your, when you present different type of possibilities, you know, and everything must be achieved in the stepwise manner. It was the same with Poland. When we created solidarity movement, I was very, how to say, happy, but at the same time, I didn't believe that we are so close to independence. And I support independent Belarus by my heart. I hope that with help also of Poland, Poland is supporting very much Belarus right now, and the freedom movement in Belarus, and also Ukraine. I hope that we can achieve something together. And this will be, of course, some kind of a modern approach to this region, okay, which was in the past existing under Duchy of, Duchy of Lithuania and old Crown of Poland to some degree. This is, of course, debatable, but we have a common history for almost 400 years. And we should support the best of this history. And I really like to congratulate you. So I leaving floor to you.
Thank you. Yes, I mentioned in my presentation 4 scenario for future of Belarusian nation.
Yes.
But I left one additional scenario in the book, which is not presented here, and I didn't discuss much this fifth scenario in construction of new union, which was dreamed by Pilsudski, was dreamed by our leaders of Belarusian People Republic in 1980, by Belarusian People Front in the 90s, by Pozniak and other people. I mean, Baltic Black Sea Union, which could be included Poland, like all the countries of the Rzeczpospolita or Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and plus other countries like Estonia, let's say, and Moldova, Ukraine, Poland, Belarus. So Solidarność was fighting for 10 years to win. Revolution of Hope 2020 started 2 years ago. I understand it takes time, and the revolution is suppressed now, depressed totally. But who knows? We have to wait, to be patient, to be prepared. It's necessary to be prepared. Every person, every Belarusian, and maybe not only Belarusian, but other people who support the idea of independent Belarusian nation, I think, should do what he can do on its own place, writing books, helping the people with money, joining to projects, to making some project in Belarus to develop democracy, etc. We understand that public society in Belarus also suppressed, so it's very difficult, but step by step, maybe it will be possible, still may be possible. So we have to work further for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I like to invite you. Probably will be next year. We will have the fourth House Kahalecki Symposium, and the topic of it will be this question of 3 C's concept. And I will be very happy to hear your presentation. Maybe this will be extremely important for our symposium. Thank you so much, and congratulations again. Very good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you.
Peter, one more question to continue a question for the Dr. Yablonsky. It's again provocative. What do you think for us? What is the big difference? We are going to be under Russian influence, Ukrainian influence, or Polish influence? We will be still under someone who tried to dominate a little bit. Or do you think we are going to be equal in future? Because if you are going to accept some support for the Polish or Ukrainian, you are going to get obligation. And Lukashenko people will be saying, well, what is it big different to have obligation from the Russian financial support or Polish support or Ukrainian support? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. You can consider myself as a romantic and dreamer, but I am a serious proponent of neutrality, or even armed neutrality for Belarus. I studied this question and looked at the history of the neutrality starting from the 17th century and until now. But you know, all depends on the big powers, and to be neutral in these conditions, it would be quite difficult. Let's say even quite traditionally neutral countries like Sweden and Finland, now seeing that Russia bombing the peaceful cities of Ukraine, now are trying to join the North Alliance. So still the idea to be neutral. It's nice. It's a very good idea, very attractive. And if you remember this, in some time, Joseph Broz Tito, along with other leaders in the third world, like Indian leaders, etc., organized a movement of unjoining. Sorry, the name, неприсоединение. And by the way, Belarus is a member of this organization, but the role of this organization is not the role which was supposed to be. So I share your concern about the role of small nation within the union of the a little bit bigger nations. In fact, by the way, the title of my book, first title of my book was Belarus Prospects of Middle-Sized Nation, because I meant there that the fate of small and middle-sized countries should be regulated in some way. And there are no mechanism in the United Nations now about the neutrality of countries. There is no public opinion about the neutrality. And the example of Ukraine showed that neutrality is a wrong policy for the people. Ukraine announced neutrality, but then the results of this neutrality we see now on the fields of the battles. So nevertheless, the humanity will develop and will think about other model of existence. Sometimes the states will disappear, probably, and maybe nation will disappear, which I don't believe in that. But the situation may change. So I don't have exact answer on your question, but this is a question which I ask myself for many times. There is no right answer for this question, but what can I else to do to add this about reorganization, maybe United Nations. As I mentioned before, each big huge war led to the establishment of new security collective system. So why, let's say, in the UN we don't see such countries like Germany? I mean, in the Council of Security Council. Why we don't see such countries like Japan? The 70 years passed from the World War II, but they are still, how to say, a loser, or some India or Brasilia, etc. And why the roles, why the voice of small and middle-sized countries nobody wants to hear? Nobody wants to hear. So many questions. And let's say China now can try to capture Taiwan, or let's say China or Russia has a rule of the veto. They could block any decision of the whole bunch of the representatives of different countries, like let's say 100 countries may vote for one decision, and Russia or China or other will against. So it doesn't work. So, but I believe we will wait.
All right, any questions or comments from anyone? I see okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Hi. Hi, it's Valentina. Let me start my video. Peter, thank you so much. First of all, can you hear me?
You
Yes.
still close your camera
yes.
is
Okay.
blocked.
Yes. So first of all, thank you so much for writing this book, because I would say actually we are really lacking the kind of scientific book like that. We have a lot of books in the Belarusian, but to put it in system and put it in English and publish it in English, I think it's a huge achievement, not only for you, but for all our community, for all Belarusians in the world. It's what I would like to say. And second, I am not sure that Ukraine had neutrality. I think the reason for Russia to try to grab them, it's their intention to union with the Northern Union, like alliance. I'm not sure you're sorry, not sure you were right saying that neutrality will lead to some problems. I don't think so. I think Belarus still should be neutral, and I think Belarus shouldn't join any alliances, any big powers. I think Belarusian people by nature are really standalone. I think to be neutral in the blood on the Belarusian people, it's what I try to say. So, and again, thank you so much for writing such a great book. Thank you. I'm really proud of you.
I'd like to comment about the neutrality of Ukraine. When I talked about the neutrality of Ukraine, I meant that they were this statement was in constitution in the very beginning of the independent Ukraine, but later they changed this. They refused to have this position. Moreover, I remember that the law about the nuclear weapon should be
Destroyed there. Yeah.
Should be considered in the Rada. Regarding neutrality of Belarusians, I totally agree with you that according to the national character, neutrality is right condition for them. But this great powers every time, how to say,
They try to fight.
Interrupt. Yeah. So, but nevertheless, this idea still is alive, and some researchers some scholars consider that status of neutrality might be the option along with some other collective security system like now existing in the Europe, where 12 countries joined to have some military units within Europe to define the territories and their people. So nevertheless, the history of neutrality has a long history, and might be will develop in some next period.
You know, my dream Belarus to be like Switzerland. Beautiful, peaceful, and rich. This is the dream. I know I'm the same as you. I'm a dreamer, but I really want to believe, and I really believe it will be one day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if anyone have any comments and questions? I guess no. So it's just we like to thank you everyone to join us today, and thanks to Dr. Peter Murzionak for the beautiful book. I've read half of that, and I still kind of learning a lot of stuff from it and enjoying as well. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much for all people who joined to this event, and I wish you a good night and all the best in your future and your everyday life, your families. Thank you very much for coming.